Hello, today I'm going to be talking about the Enlightenment. Enlightenment was a very special period of European history that happened mostly in Great Britain and France in the 18th century. So when we talk about the Enlightenment, as you may see in this small text over here, they were talking why is it Enlightenment, also called sometimes the Age of Reason, the Age of Light. What was the light? The light was the truth. They were breaking away from the obscurity, from darkness, of ignorance of the European medieval period, and they were achieving the light of truth, the light of understanding, and the light of reason. So, talking about the most important ideas, the first one is obviously that they believed that the universe was fundamentally rational. This means that it could be understood through the use of reason. There was reason for the things to happen. It wasn't just because the God decided to. So no, there was a reason for everything to happen, and there is like a cause and effect relationship, or some other type of relationship between different events and different things, etc., etc. There was a metaphor that is attributed to Isaac Newton, that universe was like a clock, where all the mechanisms, they were affecting each other and they were working in perfect harmony. Another important idea is that the truth can be arrived through empirical observation. This is very important because from now on, it's like the observation, it's the questioning, it's the use of reason are the ways to understand the world and to know the truth. Another important idea is that the experience, human experience, is the foundation of the human understanding. And no authority could be preferred over this experience. This is very important because before, the source of the truth about the world was the Bible. It was the teachings of the church, or it was the decisions of the divine kings. This is no longer true. Enlightenment is going to break away from this tradition. And they're going to say that, well, the authority is the authority, and the truth is the truth. These are two different things. And if you want to experience the truth, if you want to know the truth, you have to experience, you have to reason, you have to ask questions, etc., etc. Another important point of enlightenment is that all human life, just like the universe, it could be understood, and since it could be understood, it could be explained, and since it could be explained, it could be manipulated or engineered or changed. The same way we manipulate something to make it better, the world, the society, everything could be also manipulated. And as a result, they have this new idea of progress. Progress was completely unacceptable before. Why? Because the universe was created in 6 days, and this is the way it stays, and it's going to stay like this forever. Nothing is going to change this, right? It was the idea that the life is stable the way it is, and it's not changing. So the idea of progress or some kind of gradual advancement was something absolutely new. Many of enlightened philosophers, they were interested in education. They were interested in how do people learn, if they already know something or if they learn from the experience. Especially Baron de Montesquieu was very interested in these topics. And they believed that human beings could be improved through the education. They could be educated to become better people, to become more rational, to become more clever, to become more moral in many aspects. And finally, the Enlightenment is going to start breaking away from religious doctrine. They're going to say that in science, in understanding of the human world, in for example, politics, there was no necessity for religious doctrine. They're going to start separating like the spiritual life and the normal everyday life into different things. So talking about the most important representatives of Enlightenment, I'm going to start with two English philosophers. This is Thomas Hobbes, and we have John Locke over here. Thomas Hobbes was very famous for his book called Leviathan. In this book, he's going to argue that for society to exist, there was a necessity of the existence of the strong ruler. In his life, Hobbes had experienced the English Civil War, and he believed that he saw during the Civil War that people kill each other for small resources, for money, and he saw them as bad by nature. So he believed that only strict ruler, only strict law is going to make those people comply and behave as they should. And also, Hobbes is going to be one of the first to talk about the social contract. The idea of the social contract is very important for our political system today. And in case of Hobbes, he's going to say that there is like an agreement between the society, that there is a ruler, let's say the king, and there are like the vassals that are going to be like below his, accepting his decisions. John Locke is going to be very different. John Locke is going to be much later. He was also an English philosopher, and we remember him for the idea of the natural rights. Locke is going to argue that humans, by nature, by God's will, or by whatever you want to say, they naturally have three rights: life, liberty, and prosperity. Or in some cases, they change it for property, for example. These three rights are given by God and may not be taken away by any government, by any ruler, by no one. So the idea of those natural rights, that there are some rights given to us by nature or by God or whatever you believe in, they are going to be completely revolutionary, and they're going to become the basis for the Declaration of Independence, for human rights later, etc., etc. The rest of the Enlightenment philosophers, like the most important and famous Enlightenment philosophers, were mostly French. So let me present, I'm going to start with Voltaire. Voltaire was like a celebrity of his time. He used to write plays, and his plays were staged in the theater. And he liked a lot comedies more the most importantly. In his comedies, he's going to make fun of the stupidity of the people, of their ignorance, of their beliefs, and of course he criticized a lot Catholic Church that was dominant in France in this period of time. And he is going to, because of all those jokes of the Church and the criticism, the Church also, they excommunicated Voltaire, and he was like out of the sight of the Church. But this conflict between Voltaire and the Church is going to promote the ideas of the religious tolerance, that we should be capable to decide for our religion that we have today. So he was very important for the development of this concept of the freedom of belief. This philosopher is Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Rousseau is remembered for many works that he did, but one of his most famous works was called On the Social Contract. And in this work that is going to retake the idea of Hobbes, he's going to say that in human society, we really do not need any kind of written law, or at least not always. Why? Because we are social beings. We are good. We want to collaborate. We want to build. We want to create. And as a result, it's in our nature, there is like a natural morality that the humanity possesses. So there is like this invisible social contract that is going to make people collaborate, because it's in their nature and it's in their interest to collaborate between each other. So this is like a completely different from what Hobbes was saying and from what Hobbes was viewing, this idea of good human beings that were collaborating through this kind of social contract. This is Denis Diderot. Diderot is famous for, once again, he made many works, but his most famous creation is the encyclopedia. He was one of the founders of the first encyclopedia. Of course, there were many more scientists and people who participated in this idea to have one book where you have all the necessary information about the world. It was completely revolutionary for its time and was very, very useful. And finally, one of, I think, everyone's favorite Enlightenment philosophers, Baron de Montesquieu. Montesquieu is remembered for the idea of the separation of power. This idea that we have today applied in most of the countries, including Mexico, that separates the judiciary, that separates the executive, and that separates the legislature. So the president, the parliament, and the judges, there are three different powers that may not influence each other. For what is this? Well, to avoid a kind of dictatorship where just one person is going to have all the powers and he's going to do whatever he wants. In this way, the power is balanced. Why? Because if one power changes, the other three, the other two, they are going to affect it and to change the decision. And finally, talking about how the ideas of enlightenment spread. The two most important ways to spread the ideas of enlightenment salons were the famous social gathering where the most educated, the richest nobles, they're going to get together and they're going to discuss the matters of the day. And also in these salons, they're going to read the works of enlightened philosophers, read about new ideas, read about new discoveries, etc., etc. So this, the main purpose of salons was, of course, for the high society to meet each other and to discuss the matters, but it's also going to help spread the ideas of enlightenment. And obviously, the encyclopedia is going to help a lot to spread the knowledge and spread the ideas of enlightenment. And finally, I need to mention the enlightened despots or the kings who were so interested in these ideas of philosophers that are going to try to implement at least some of them in their kingdoms, like, for example, Frederick the Great of Prussia, who was a great friend of Voltaire. But just imagine, Voltaire was making jokes of everyone, so the friendship didn't last. Eventually, they had, he quarreled with the king and he had to escape. The second one is Joseph II of Austria. He also is going to embrace series of reforms based on the ideas of the Enlightenment philosophers. Though many of those reforms were objected by the nobles and by the people, but still he has this title of reformer and of enlightened despot. And finally, Catherine the Great of Russia, the last one. She was also very interested in matters of philosophy. She's going to debate, for example, with Voltaire, mostly by letters, right? So she had correspondence, and she was very interested in those ideas. So briefly, this is the explanation of what was the Enlightenment, which is this period, a very important period of European history of 18th century that we also know as the Age of Reason.